Well, you may have missed the summer prune, but it's never too late to get out there and do it now if you need to get your trees back down into controlled heights and manageable heights, folks. And I'm talking about pruning your fruit trees down after you harvested. Now, normally by this time of the year, we're standing next to this Granny Smith apple. And if you remember in recent episodes, I spoke about this apple tree being attacked by the lorikeets and rosellas. They came in here and basically destroyed every fruit. They left me a handful of fruit at the bottom. But they got to the rest of it and I really didn't get to enjoy it because I was away for that week. Nevertheless, you can see all the summer growth that's come onto it here now. I've been to a lot of homes and I've seen a lot of trees, and sometimes I've seen trees where they've put this growth on and the owners there, the gardeners of that property, have somehow neglected to prune them back and allowed it to progress further on and on. So the following springtime, by not pruning this down, can you imagine what will happen to this tree in summertime? So we've got on at least 2 metre growth there. I'll just cut a branch down to show you what I'm talking about. This stuff down here, have a look at that. Well, it's not 2 metres. I like to think I'm 2 metres, but it's almost as tall as me. So that's about 1.4. Well, then again, I'm 1.8. So yeah, that's about that's 400 lower, isn't it? Yeah. So that's about a 1.5 metre branch there for you folks. That's a summer growth on the tree, and we've got dozens of them up there. And what we've got to do with these is basically prune them right back down to a manageable height. Now, how do you prune them? Well, there's 2 ways about it. Close your eyes and just cut away to wherever your arm reaches and the secateurs reach, or you can pay a little bit more attention and consider exactly whereabouts along the branch you're going to cut it down. We know we need to bring it down to a manageable height, so let's say this is the manageable height, right there. But we've got all these little buds appearing below it. So what can we do? We can do 2 things. We can do an undercut, which is basically cutting it just below a bud above and way past above the lower bud. See that? There's the bud there, there's a bud up there. Normally, you would go around and just cut like that there on a slight angle. I'll just do that for the example, and that's the cut there. That's a typical prune you would do on any branch if you're not too worried about the way it's going to grow later on. Well, not grow later on, but worrying about flowering. So what you're doing is directing the new growth from this bud here, which being the last one, to grow out. Now, being on this side, it'll grow out that way. So if your tree's center is here, let's say the secateurs is the trunk and this is the branch, you would aim for a bud facing away from the center, because if you pruned it to a bud that faces the center, being this way, that would grow over the center of the tree and cross over branches on the other side of the trunk, which is the opposite end. And you don't want that. That's a crossover. That causes congestion, doesn't allow light to get into the middle of the tree. So the height, simple. Arm's reach, a little bit lower than arm's reach is what I say. Don't prune to what you reach, because all that's going to happen from there is it's going to actually grow from there further up again. So it's out of arm's reach. So you want to bring it down a little bit lower, at least 30 centimetres. And why 30 centimetres? Well, you can go more if you like, depending on the shape of your tree, but at least 30 centimetres from your arm's reach. So that way, half or a third of the growth that comes on can remain on it if you like, or hopefully you establish it to becoming a fruit-bearing spur. Now, how do you do that? I explained that right at the beginning, doing an undercut, and that's what we do when we want to try and coax the tree into thinking that this particular branch is dying. What happens when I do that cut? So let's just do the cut there. That's an undercut, cutting underneath a bud, not right next to above the bud. We've cut underneath and we've left this short little stem there, which once the sap flow reaches, will heal the edge over, but because it's got nowhere else to go, that tip there, and there's no growth to come out of there, will start to die off. And that's called canker. It's a dieback that will occur on it. And when that happens, it triggers off an enzyme in the tree thinking, oh, this is dying. So what do we need to do is push this bud to grow, the tree that is, but force it to become a flowering bud, because it needs to bring on the offspring. When it thinks a branch is dying or the tree is dying itself, it will start to produce more flowers, hopefully in the right season. So by doing that now in this time of the year, you're giving the tree a chance to relax, accept the cut, and react and prepare itself for springtime. And if this dies back slightly by spring, there's a good chance, I won't say 100%, but there is a good chance where this bud will swell out and become a flowering bud. Now, how does that look at the end once you've achieved that across the entire tree? This is what it looks like after the summer growth and you've harvested on a tree that needs to be pruned and conditioned like this. Now this tree over here is an example of doing that over the last 2 or 3 years, and have a look. I have not pruned anything on this tree this year, and looking at it like this, there's very little pruning to be done. Here's a new growth. Look at that. By comparison to the Granny Smith, this one has put on only 30 centimeters of growth. And have a look at this. I did an undercut there. See that short little stem there? That's the one I did last year. It didn't quite die back. It did dry out a little bit, but it's forced this bud to grow, but it hasn't burst out in full maxi growth like the Granny Smith has done. That's because I did it early in the season. I didn't do it in the heart of winter. I did it now, maybe a little bit earlier on some trees, but in this case here for this year, if I do it now, and again, I'm going to give it another go, it is try to bud up on the tip, but I don't want it to flower there. I want to keep it a lot shorter. I can get away with keeping it like this because that's starting to fur up on the tip, and that's a good sign to say that eventually in the next year or two may become a fruit-bearing spur there for us. But again, I think this is too long, so we're going to cut it back again to an undercut like that, and we hope that dies back. And then this one eventually will swell out to become a fruit-bearing spur. And that's what I've done to the entire tree, and maybe sure, it hasn't flowered on every single one of them, but what it's done for me is reduce the overall growing habits and contain the tree to a size that's much more manageable, requires far less pruning, and eventually we may not have to prune at all, because every season when it comes to flowering again, it will be producing fruit from the same buds it did the previous season, providing you look after them properly. So that's not a bad example. Here's another one just over here that you can see that we've harvested. These are all fruit-bearing spurs. You can see we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the one area, probably 8. And obviously you'll thin them out if they're all setting fruit and trying to grow at once. So in the case of this tree here, we'll do very little pruning on it. You can see just a couple on the top there, but nothing like what I've got to do with this tree here. So you've got to persevere with it, folks. That's the truth of it all. It's a great concept or method of pruning, I should say, to producing more fruit-bearing spurs on your tree, but you've got to start from now. Because why? Well, our winters here in Melbourne, even though we get pretty cold out here, they're not cold enough, long enough for some of these trees to go dormant, completely dormant. And what I mean by that is some of these trees, from their natural habitat where they've grown and originated from, they go through heavy snowfalls during winter and ice, which puts them into complete dormancy, which then helps them react properly and growing in springtime and producing better flowers and fruit. Now, if the tree isn't completely dormant, and especially if you've got a mild winter, and if you live in the more sort of tropical, humid environment where winters are never cold enough for the trees to be able to go dormant, when you're pruning in winter, and if the tree is not completely dormant, what's the first thing that a plant does once you prune it? It will go straight into a growth spurt. It'll start to produce new growth straight away. And that's what happens with our fruit trees when we prune only in winter. It's something that we practice for many years across all states. We all came into the habits because our ancestors, our parents, grandparents came here, and they, in their home countries, like my parents from Greece, where it snowed and ice in the winter, they would prune only in winter. But here, because it doesn't snow, it doesn't get that cold continuously for 3 months straight, the trees may not, and definitely do not all of them, go to dormancy. So prune early or late summer, so early in the season, which is late summer, early autumn, and again mid to late winter, go back and just touch it up a little bit once all the leaves fall down. Because as you look at it here, how can you actually analyze a tree like this and say, I know where it needs to be pruned? I can see where it needs to be pruned when there's new growth coming over the top, as we know with that one. But with this one here, we can take a few of the branches down below, which are starting to reach down a little bit too low for the wonderful rodents and rabbits. So we'll take these lower branches off and thin out some of the top ones that may have grown like this here. We can take that off because we really don't need it to grow any further out. Let's contain it. And like I said, you don't have to prune with your eyes looking at the tree this time of the year, but it's a good thing to do. But you can just prune anywhere that you can reach to comfortably, and then go back and clean it up in winter again, folks. And that's all you got to do with your pruning. Don't forget to prune. Secateurs, these are the lowies, number one. Anvil pruners, I love this tool. It's one of the best, if not the best in my books. I know there are other brands out there that are up there in the market, but I've been working with the lowies now for the last few years and loving them. So that's the number one. And I think this is, I don't know what number this one is, but it's the smaller version of this one. It's an Anvil pruner. We've also got the bypass. So these are available on our website if you want to get them at great prices. I've got to tackle this now. Have a look at it from this side. The ligustrum is the hedge that we actually pruned down a while back. We've got a little bit of dye back here as well. Let me just clean this up. Cross-contamination, I hear you say. This is a weed. And it's not, it's a dead piece of twig there, so there's no disease on it, but it's grown back really well. We've just got this gap to fill in. That's another subject. But look at the growth on this. Have a look at it. The hedge was up to here in the past, so this is where I was keeping this plant growing, but because it wasn't getting direct sunlight in the morning, it's also caused it to grow up there so it can reach out for the sun. So now we're going to bring it right down, arm's reach, that's the height. I'm going to bring it down back here somewhere, and that's what I've done last year, and that's what I'm doing again this year. So folks, when it comes to established trees, they can put on a lot of growth, and before you know it, they can grow right out of control, where you'll need to bring out a chainsaw to bring it right back down again to a manageable height, more manageable height. So never ignore the new growth on your tree by walking away from it and not pruning it at all, because I ain't getting up there to pick an apple. They can have it. The bloody birds and the rats and the possums and whoever else likes to venture out into your garden besides folk can enjoy the fruit, because it's pointless up there. This is where I need the fruit. And also what we got to do, and we're going to do this in winter, is come back and thin out the center of this because it's really congested again. I have cut it out in the past, and this is something about gardening and gardeners. They make it, well, they can make a squillion. I won't say they make a squillion, but they can make a good living maintaining your garden. So find yourself a good gardener who knows how to prune fruit trees, because all gardeners, with all due respect, garden maintenance is great, but when it comes to pruning certain species like fruit trees and other ornamental plants, they need to have some experience behind themselves and knowledge behind it. So make sure they know what they're doing, otherwise it'll be like a few customers who've been emailing me, or followers I should say, emailing me photos of their trees that have been, let's call it hacked, that haven't produced fruit since they've been pruned like that. And that's because they've taken out all the productive branches, all those spurs that actually produce fruit, all the 2-year-old branches. They've cut it right back down to a level where the tree now has to spend 3 or 4 years re-establishing its flowering positions. And for that to happen, you've got to get back onto the right pruning techniques. So if you need more advice, you can contact us or watch lots more videos, just like this one here, telling you what to do. Oh, look at this. This is the rootstock of the apple tree that's suckered out over here. It's about 2 meters away from the trunk itself, and it's trying to grow on top of all the growth it's had over there, to trying to grow into its own tree as well. Now, look at the thickness of these branches. This has been cut down in the past, but we haven't dug out that section there. I'm not going to do it now. It's a bit of a tedious task, and I need some extra tools to get this done properly. We're going to dig this out and show you how you remove all these suckers and cut out the eye where they grow from, so they don't continue suckering up every year. But just have a look at this. Who's that? Layer. Look how this cuts like butter. This thick branch, if I should have brought a pair of secateurs to show you the difference, but you're going to think I'm acting it out if I try and cut with a secateur, and I can't. So that there is at least, I reckon that's a 12, 15 centimetre, 15 millimetre diameter piece. Look at that, just cut right through like butter. Here's another one. They're bloody amazing, that's for sure. This is one spring summer's growth, this branch here, and as were all the other ones there. So in the last spring summer, we've had basically a completely new tree growing out that I've just cut out there. Unbelievable, isn't it? And the last one for now. Let's have a look at it. What a difference. So we've taken the height down. I'm going to take the bottom off in winter. I'm not going to worry about that part now. It was just the height that I needed to work on. You can see there's a heap. Look at all that. That's all the new growth that's had to be taken out. And we've opened up the middle a little bit as well, folks. So get out there. I've got a shitload, yeah. I've got over 200 fruit trees that I need to prune down. Thank God they're not all as big as this, and that's what I'm doing this week, so you should be doing the same. Check out our website, vasilisgarden.com. Our click and collect for Thebarton, South Australia, folks, has to end by Monday, I think it is, or Sunday or Monday coming, so we can pack your orders and get them up there while we do our pop-up. So put your orders in, select click and collect so you can get it in Thebarton, and obviously Dandenong North is open, as well as Lethbridge. vasilisgarden.com for everything you need every day. And every week we're still giving away that fruit and veg. Is it a veg and fruit? No, it's a grape and fruit press. That's what it is, the deluxe version of that. So grab your orders in and go into the draw for yourself a chance to win. That's bad English. That's Vasily. From me, Vasily. Marcy.